In this second video, we're going to be looking at a specific graph and how we're going to find the information using your graphing calculator. So the first thing that's going to be really important here is what we're plugging into our y1. Similar to how we solved the quadratics, we're going to take f of x, y equals, we're going to take that whole equation, we're going to plug that into the calculator. The other thing that you'll notice underneath, if you're going to use the intersect method, I would put 0 into your y2, and honestly you could leave it there because we're really only going to be plugging in one function at a time. Alright, so I'm going to go over to the calculator right now, and we're going to plug that in. So go to your y equals, I have some stuff in there. Now notice I already have 0 in my y2, so I'm going to leave that. Let's try that again. All right, then once you have that in, and you have your 0 in your y2, we could go and start finding our values. Before we even do that, I would just hit your graph button. In fact, let's do zoom 6 just in case your window is not in the right spot. Then I'm going to take, I'm just going to sketch the picture of that and label what I'm going to be finding before I actually go and find all my information. So keep that up in front of you. I obviously have to switch back and forth. So I'm just going to draw a nice sketch of this graph. Does not have to be perfect, but it should be semi-accurate in terms of where it goes through the axis, positive, negative side, and so on. So I have 2 zeros. I have a minimum point, a y-intercept, which I'm actually going to have to add in the y-intercept value in here, a maximum, and another minimum. Now we have the difference between relative and the actual max or min is going to be important here. And then I'm going to label these in order. You don't have to do it like this. I'm going to label this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then my zeros are points 1 and 3. I have a minimum, and that's actually the lowest point on the graph. That's number 2, or point number 2. And then I have another 0. I have the y-intercept, which I'm just going to fill in right here underneath where it says 0. So for y-intercept, that is point number 4 on my graph. So just add a space in for that. Then I have a relative maximum. That's point number 5. And then another relative minimum at point number 6. Okay. So now I'm going to go through and find that information, and then we'll use that information to find the stuff down below. First point I see is a 0, so I'm going to use the second trace intersect feature, which is number 5. I'm going to scroll till I get close to that first 0 point. And then if you're doing intersect, remember you just have to hit enter 3 times. So I get negative 2.07. I'm going to round that, comma 0. So I'm going to record that answer. Now, it helps because we're finding these different values is to go in order. So now I'm going to find the minimum, or 0.2. And when we hit second trace, rather than selecting intersect, we have options for max or min. So I know I'm finding a minimum, which is why it's important to identify what you have first. Select it. Now I'm on the left side already. I'm just going to get a little closer. So we'll select a point on the left side, and then we're going to scroll around the turn, basically there. And that's something we're going to ask about later, the turning point. So that minimum is a turning point. We'll go around to the right side of that, hit enter, and then enter one more time. So it's important you pick a point on the left and a point on the right. And then same thing as we did before, we're going to record that answer, but in the correct spot. So that's our actual minimum. We'll just round that to 2 decimal places. Negative 1.57, comma, negative 3.49. Okay, our third point is a 0 again. So we're going to do second trace intersect, number 5. Oops. And we're kind of close, so I'm just going to get a little bit closer and then hit enter 3 times. So you see how nice it is if you go in order. You don't have a ton of scrolling to do. So that comes out to negative 0.86 comma 0. Record that. Now my fourth point, I actually can't use the graph part of the calculator to find it, but it's very easy to find in your table. So briefly, I'm going to hit second graph, and then mine happens to actually be there, but just scroll until you find where the 0 is in your table, and there's your y-intercept. It's always going to be there because you'll have your x value of 0. So 0, 5 is my y-intercept. And then 0.5, we have a relative maximum, so we're going to go back to the graph part and do second trace maximum, which is number 4. You can either scroll or hit the number 4. And then I'm going to just get a little closer, but I already am on the left side, so I'm going to hit enter. Then I'm going to scroll around just that turn. So just go around the maximum point, so we're in between those 2 turning points, hit enter, enter a third time, and I get 0.41 comma 5.59. And then last one with the calculator is going to be our relative minimum. So it's not the actual minimum because it's not the lowest point. If you look, this is the lowest. The relative minimum is just a turning point. That's a low point on the graph, but it's not the actual lowest point. All right, so we're going to do second trace minimum because it is a low point. And that is number 3. We are already on the left side. I'll just get a little bit closer, hit enter, go around the turn with the right arrow, hit enter, and then a third enter. And that's going to give us 1.16 and then 4.91. All right, so that's it for the calculator component. We talked about the turning points, so we have our minimums, and then we also have the maximum point here. So we have 3 of them. Points 2, 5, and 6 are our turning points. There are 3. And this is the max that it could be. Now the increasing and decreasing stuff, I am going to get, this is going to be a little tricky because I want to be able to see what's happening as I'm going along. Let's do blue and green. So blue is going to be my decreasing. And this is a trace from left to right. We're going to use the x values as we do this. And then from 5 to 6, it's also decreasing. And then in green, I'm going to do my increasing. So from 0.2 to 5, and 6 and on. And then for these, you're going to be using your max and min points and your x values, because it's the domain where it's increasing, decreasing. So in this case, it is increasing from 2 to 5. So I'm going to take the x value from 0.2, which is negative 1.57, to the x value of 0.5, which is 0.41, union, and then it's going to be starting at x value of 0.6, 1.16 to infinity. And you can also do this with inequality notation. I did that way on the posted notes if you want to check that out. And then for decreasing, it's going from negative infinity to the value of negative 1.57. So you'll see some repeats in here. union, and then the points from 5 to 6, so 0.41, 1.16. So you should be reusing some of those same values. Let's see. And then range is just going to be the lowest y value. Remember, range is your y value. So the lowest the y value goes is negative 3.49 is less than or equal to y is less than infinity. Or you could do the interval notation for that. Whoops, that should actually be a bracket. So you have to be careful with the interval. Some of you had difficulty with that probably on the quiz previous to this. And then we have the greater than 0, less than 0 part. So that's going to be using your zeros. You can use covering it up. That's going to happen at negative infinity to the first point is above. So negative infinity to negative 2.07. And then this is above. And union. And then starting again at 0.3, so negative 0.86, comma, infinity. And then the less than 0, I actually can use this screen. You can see that the part that's underneath or below is between points 1 and 3, so it's going to be between negative 2.07 and negative 0.86. So when you get to working on practice for this part, the last section of the increasing, decreasing, and the greater than and less than 0 might be something you'll need a little bit of assistance with. So definitely make sure you ask questions about that if you're still not 100% sure.